Hello and welcome to the Alistair Greener Generationally Speaking podcast, where we look at bridging the generation gap by debunking myths, tackling stereotypes and sharing practical tips on how we can build stronger intergenerational connections. Today I'm talking to, well, you can definitely say that this podcast has variety. So many different people from so many different backgrounds, and today I'm talking to a fishery contractor and fishing guide with a passion for the river and countryside management. He grew up in an urban environment and has now relocated to pursue river management. So welcome Gen Z, Freddie Miller.
Hi there, thank you.
Great to see you, Freddie. And we just got in a conversation in a pub one night, and I just suddenly thought you would be a great guest to have on the podcast, because one of the things that we love to do is to show different perspectives and show people from a multitude of generations and a multitude of backgrounds. And you are, without question, the first person we've had who is involved in country pursuits in the way that you are. So very warm welcome to you. The first thing I want to talk about is a little bit about your background, the fact that you started off in an urban environment and then suddenly you had the call from the country. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so well, both my parents were grew up in a city. So I was born in London, was there until I was 22, 23. So left just after the second lockdown. I think we'd all got a bit fed up of being locked down in a city and the constraints that had. And also I went to university and did agriculture at uni, which was, I think, a bit of a shock to everyone, because I would work backwards in what I wanted to do. So I know what I don't want to do. I don't want to live in a city. I don't want to work in an office. I want to work outside. So I worked backwards, went into agriculture, and here we are.
So what was it, again, that, you just flit over that, but there can't be that many people who live in London who suddenly decide on agriculture. I mean, did you have any, as a youngster, did you go to farms, or did you have relatives in the business?
Well, so my grandparents they've got a small holding, 60 acres, which they've never farmed since I've been alive. But obviously go and visit them on weekends, holidays, and growing up around that environment and shooting and fishing with my granddad. So I've always preferred the countryside to London. I think it's one of those that it all happens so quickly and it's works out.
And it's, that happens so often, doesn't it, where people become really inspired by grandparents. And I think we can never underestimate the impact that grandparents have on their grandchildren, and certainly in terms of their life choices and what they end up doing as careers. Yeah,
well, it's an odd one, because my granny she was a doctor, and then my granddad was career Navy. So they were all a bit shocked as well that I went into what I went into, but I grew up fishing with my granddad and shooting with him. So I think that's where a lot of the passion comes from. And yeah, I think, as you said, I think it's people take a lot of inspiration from grandparents, parents, whoever it may be.
And one of the things that is always interesting whenever people pick a career choice that's different from what would be considered the norm is, oh, well, he'll grow out of it, he'll come up with something else. Did you go through that kind of conversation with your family?
I don't think I went through that conversation, but I think it was definitely in the background. I think I probably heard snippets of it. But I think I'm one of those, if someone says I can't do something, I quite like to prove them wrong, in a way. And so if they say, oh, he won't be a farmer, okay, yes, I'm not a farmer, but I'm still working in in an agricultural background, in a way, doing a bit of fish farming and river keeping and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to do a bit of debunking of some myths surrounding your industry, because, again, a lot of people will have views on it which are often founded on incorrect information. So I'll give you an opportunity to do that in a moment. But what about your friends at school, your fellow Gen Zers back in London? What do they make of all of this?
I think they're all a bit shocked. I think they all thought that I'd sort of end up sort of working in an office sort of similar to them, or if not working in an office, still living in a city, but doing, well, I don't know, sort of professional dog walking or something like that, because I've always enjoyed sort of being outside. But I think they're all a bit shocked that I've ended up fishing and sort of teaching people to fish and working in that industry.
And how are your friendships now, given the fact that you've taken different career paths? You know, for some people that makes the bond stronger because you get together and talk about those differences, or sometimes you just naturally drift apart. Because I'm guessing you've got a whole new friend set where you are now and where you're working. So are you still in good contact with those back in London?
There's definitely sort of a bit of both. There's definitely a few that sort of I've drifted away from, they've drifted away from me, but then there's some where sort of, even though we don't see each other very often, we sort of message each other every day, and sort of every now and then I'll go down to London and see them, or they'll come up here and we'll go fishing or shooting or something like that. So we're always, there are a few that have sort of always sort of stayed in contact. And I think, well, especially from boarding school kind of time, I've always sort of been of the belief I'd much rather have 5 really good friends than 50 friends that I might speak to now and then. And those 5 friends from school, we sort of meet up every year, have a few drinks, parties, all of that kind of stuff, and they come fishing, or I go to sort of their places down by the coast and have a weekend on the beach or something like that.
Now, you're not what someone would probably call a typical Gen Z. That whole thing, that concept of, 5 really good friends rather than this multiple of friends that you hear about people having on social media. I remember when Facebook, was the prominent social media platform, it was all about the amount of friends you've got. And let's be honest, most people didn't even know half the people they were friending. How is it you didn't go down that route, do you think?
I think I've always been a fairly closed off person in a way. Sort of, I'll only let off I'll speak to loads of people, but I won't sort of tell them everything until I sort of can trust them in a way. I think that's sort of a big thing for me, sort of that trust factor in a friendship. Don't get me wrong, I've still, through sort of my job, I need to have social media accounts, and there are definitely people on there who I have no idea who they are. But again, that's just through my job, really. It's sort of with public accounts, you need to sort of accept them for the algorithms and all of that. But I think that's one thing that I do sort of understand is sort of the social media algorithms and sort of how to sort of increase my business through that. Just with photographs and stuff like that, but no, it's a difficult question, that, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure how to answer.
You answered it just fine, and actually, you know what's lovely? I can tell you're in the country because I can hear a chainsaw in the background, so we we know that you're walking the walk. A very quick thought, though, about the work that you do, and you hinted it there, the fact that you're pursuing what would be considered a rural career. Well, it is a rural career, yet you're using all the modernities of social media and so on to run your business. Is that something that you see amongst other people that you socialise with in the country? Because some people from a more urban background might just think that people in the country have still got straw stuck in their hair and that they're a little bit behind the times.
I definitely think there's parts of that. I think that you've got to use social media as a tool. It's there, use it. But again, it's. I think that there's, and also especially now, more generations are using social media. Like, it's not just an exclusive platform for one generation. You can use it as a 15-year-old, or you can use it as a 90-year-old. It's all the same platforms. It's just obviously a different generation of different understandings of it.
And anybody who's watched Clarkson's Farm will know that actually there's more and more people in agriculture getting on social media and posting Instagram and TikTok videos, of them pursuing their role in the farming community. And that seems to be something that's been relatively recent. How long has it been around as far as you're concerned, social media and the work that you do?
I think probably it's really sort of boomed since COVID. I think a lot of people during COVID sort of obviously not being able to work as much, sort of needed to find other sources of income, and you can make money by promotions or adverts on your social media. So I think that a lot of different generations started to move into that, and I think that's where sort of we started to see all of sort of the influencer generation coming through. And I think that I'm lucky in my generation that there's a lot of people that understand it quite well. So it's quite easy to, if I'm struggling with something, I can go to a friend and say, I'm not sure how to do this. Can you give me a hand? And they know 2 clicks of the keyboard and they know what to do. But I think, especially sort of looking at the Clarkson's Farm example, I think that a lot of sort of farming now is becoming more and more difficult to make a profit on. And I think that anything that businesses can do to make that extra revenue, diversifying their business, whether that's not planting exclusive sort of arable crops, but having a pumpkin patch or a glamping area on their farm, it's another way of diversifying a business by using the social media.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing that more and more. So tell us exactly what it is that the way that your business runs. What do you actually do?
So I've got my own business. So my own business is I'm a fishery contractor, and then so that's basically I go and work at different fisheries all around the country. So at the moment I'm working at Maningford Fishery down near Pewsey, sort of doing a bit of their river keeping and helping out on the fish farm and the fishery, sort of chatting with the anglers and making sure they're all right while maintaining the site. And then so next week I'm working for another contractor. We're going eel trapping down in Frome, which will be good fun. And then I also sort of what I'm really sort of trying to get my business at the moment is more sort of guiding people, especially fly fishing. So that's where my passion is. I sort of go fishing every day when I can. I'd like to think I sort of know what I'm doing with it. And I've sort of never had sort of the help growing up fishing, and there's not a lot of the people my age and younger that are getting into fly fishing. It's sort of, I think, seen a bit as an elitist sport. Whereas you look, because it is, there can be expensive startup costs in it. You obviously need your rods and your reels and all of your tackle. And you compare that to coarse fishing or carp fishing, for example, where you can pay 50 quid to get a combo set and pay 5 quid to go to a canal and go fishing there. Whereas trout fishing, salmon fishing, all of that is quite sort of seen as exclusive and luxury. I think it's almost just trying to sort of break down the barriers of, yes, it can be expensive, but you can also do it for free. So at the moment, I'm doing a lot of sort of fly fishing in the sea. I'm going for sea bass and mullet, which is a lot of fun. A lot of people sort of call mullet the bonefish of England because they're incredibly hard fighting fish and difficult to catch, but you don't need to go all the way to sort of the salt flats and that in Cuba to go and fish for them. They're on our doorstep.
What's lovely is hearing your passion for what you do, and the very different views, throughout our communities about, fishing, about shooting, and what would be considered as country pursuits. Do you see that disconnect between you and people, say, in more urban areas who maybe don't necessarily understand exactly what you do, or do they get it?
I think there's a bit of both. I think there's some people that are like, why are you torturing these animals? And it's like, well, it's not. It's a way of living. People have done it since the beginning of time. They've had to eat food and get their own food. And I would much rather go down to a lake and go and catch a stocked fish that's been grown on and produced for me to go and catch, rather than go into a wild river and go and take a wild fish out and remove the stocks of that. And it's the same as sort of, I'm sure as most gamekeepers would say, if you don't have river keepers and people working in the industry, then who's there to actually look after them and make sure that water companies aren't ruining them, as they have been in sort of recent times with sewage pumping into rivers and taking too much water out of them. So recently, I think Southern Water wanted to take a few million extra gallons of water out of the River Test, which I don't know if you know, but one of the premier chalk streams in the world, because I think it's something like 75% of the world chalk streams are in England, and that brings huge amount of tourism to these areas. And if those rivers don't have anything in them, then what happens to the people that are dependent on them for their jobs?
You're often seen as part of a generation who are more enlightened about animal welfare and, looking after the environment and so on. Do you find that you are sort of having to work with those who don't have that same view? Maybe they come from a more traditional view that aren't as concerned about the environment as maybe you are, or is that just a myth?
I think it's a bit of both. I think that people that are coming and fishing and shooting have that respect for what they're doing. They're not. So I was always brought up in a way, you're not killing it just to kill it. You're killing it for a reason, whether that's for pest control or to eat. And I think that if a lot more people understood that we're doing it for a reason, we're not just doing it for the fun of it. Yes, you get enjoyment from it sometimes, but that's not the main reason I'm doing it. I go and catch a fish because I want to eat it for dinner, or a friend wants a fish for a party or something. So I'll go and catch it, give it to them, and they're getting the enjoyment out of it. I've got the enjoyment out of catching it. And there's one of my favourite things is when I'm taking a young kid, sort of 7, 8 years old, who's never fished before. When they first get a fish on their line, it's just that smile on their face. They know that, and it's something you can't replicate. They're there and they're playing this fish, and you know that it's only going to last 5-10 minutes, but that might be a memory that lasts their lifetime.
People in your industry must be thrilled that you, as a younger person coming into the industry, because they need that continuity. Is it something that the industry is struggling with? Are you a bit of an outlier being so young, or actually are there more people getting involved than we might think?
I think there are a few more getting involved now, sort of from sort of 18 to sort of my age, sort of 24, 25. I think there is sort of a bit more of a move into it. Whereas I think in the past there's been a bit of an age gap. So the majority of the people I work with are sort of mid to late, sort of 30 to mid to late 40s, and you look at especially river keepers. A lot of them now are thinking of retiring, but they don't want to retire because they don't know who's going to step into their shoes, and they don't want to leave the river with no one to maintain it. And I think that obviously I didn't go and do fisheries at university, but I think more and more people are starting to go to sort of unis and colleges like Sparsholt and doing fisheries management and river keeping. And I think there is more people are getting into it in my generation.
And what do you think your generation brings to the industry compared with older generations in terms of your, maybe your attitudes, the way that you use social media and so on? What exactly do you think that, you're able to bring that is unique to your age?
I think it's one, we wouldn't be doing it if, I think in previous generations, say sort of the 40, 50-year-olds who are working in fisheries, they're working it because it's been a generational sort of family thing. Their fathers, their grandfathers have done it, and they've been brought up similar to farming. They're following in the family footsteps in the family business. Whereas I think a lot more young people are they're chasing. So for me, money isn't a factor in what I do. I enjoy it. That's why I do it. I'd much rather have a great quality of life and enjoy what I do than be stressed and burdened with work, but be on a multi-million-pound yacht every sort of summer in Croatia. Yeah, so it's nice to go on holidays, but at the same time, I enjoy what I do. So work isn't work for me. I'm sort of, it's a passion that I get paid to do. And I think that's a lot more younger people that are getting involved in that because they enjoy doing it and they'd rather be happy, especially in sort of the age of, time of sort of mental health crises and that. I think that more young people would much rather go and do a job that they enjoy and be happy than go and do a job they don't enjoy, be stressed, but have obviously that financial sort of, they're in a more financially sort of better off. Whereas for me, I'd much rather be happy in my job than be sat on millions of pounds.
You talked about mental health there, and it's a very big topic for especially the young at the moment for a multitude of different reasons. And, I've certainly seen reports about mental health in agriculture, in rural businesses. Is it something that you're seeing, and is it specific to a particular age group, or is it general? What are you seeing?
I think that it's one of those that it's well, as you probably know, it's almost impossible to see. You can't see if someone is walking down the street if they have anxiety or depression, and it's more, I think, my generation especially look out for their mates a lot more. They notice when something's wrong, and they're not sort of fearful to go up to a friend and say, "Oh, mate, let's go for a pint. What's going on?" And have a chat about it and say, "We'll go to the pub. We'll have a pint. What's going on?" When we leave the pub, won't talk about it. We'll talk about it in a closed environment. If you need help, give me a call. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. But we're all here for you, kind of thing. And I think there is probably, it is more mental health problems in young people now because of pressures and stresses as well, especially with sort of more technology coming into jobs and people fearing for, I've just gone to university, spent all this money, what am I going to do to pay it off? And straight away from leaving university, for the most part, you're going to be looking at £30,000-40,000 of debt before you even got a job. Which is, I think, it just puts a lot of stress on young people when they're in that vulnerable position and need sort of the help to get through it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of charities I know that help with mental health for people in rural areas who might not have access to some of the resources that are available in more urban areas, for example. You are, as you've said, clearly in an industry and an environment where you're around older people generally. How do you get on with them? How do you bridge that generation gap?
I think personally I've been quite lucky in how I've been brought up. I've always sort of been around sort of, so my father was a literary agent, my mum was an author, so I've grown up sort of going to book launches where at 8 years old, you're the youngest by 32 years for the most part. So it's either go and stand in a corner and drink your fruit juice or go and chat to someone. I think that's helped me in speaking to older generations and getting on with them and just conversational skills. I think that's the one thing that a lot of my generation struggle with is walking into a pub and just sitting, if you walk into a new area, pub you've never been to, sit at the bar, wait, and if someone says something to you, just have a conversation with them. It's I think a dying sort of, don't want to say art, but a dying skill, just to go to a pub and have a conversation with someone like we did when we met.
Exactly. I was going to say that's exactly how we started the conversation. But of course, if that's not how you've been brought up, or that's not your natural environment, you're stepping out of a comfort zone. What is there any advice you could give to maybe somebody of your age who hasn't been brought up in that same way, who hasn't been used to that methodology of getting in there and having a chat? what kind of things do you think people could do to help ease that just a fear they have of talking to new people and bridging that gap?
I think it's, if you look at sort of a lot of young people, they'll play a lot of video games and they'll have a headset on and they'll be chatting to people all over the world and they won't have a problem doing it. When it's behind a screen, they don't. I think it's that face-to-face conversation that a lot of young people struggle with. And I think if they just think, well, I can speak to someone on a computer who I don't know, why don't I just try it? Go into a safe environment and just try it. If someone doesn't want to chat with you, you don't need to have a chat with them. But for the most part, there will be someone who will have a chat with you, and just give it a go. There's nothing to lose from it.
As they say in the movies, it's the fear of fear that causes the problem, not of actually what's going to happen. Because, as you say, what on earth was going to go wrong? But there is that perception that it's a scary thought. One of the things that we're all very aware of is generational bias. Younger people thinking maybe that older people are out of touch and that they don't know anything about technology. And then the other way around, that older people think that young people are lazy, they don't want to do stuff, and they're not motivated. Clearly, you beat those stereotypes in both fronts. But what advice would you give to older people to actually understand the younger generation better?
I think it is, even though it's a difficult one to say, talk to them. I don't have that stereotypical, he's, especially you look at an urban environment, kid walking down the street in a full black tracksuit with his hood up. Maybe a few older people would look at him and go, I don't want to go anywhere near him, he's trouble, he is. But he might not be. He might be just a normal kid he's cold. He's wearing those clothes for comfort. They are comfortable clothes. Why not? I think there is a lot of just judgment straight off the bat, especially from the older generation to the younger generation. But again, I think that I'm lucky in the position I am. I'm sort of always, the average age of fishermen is older, and they'll come up to me and have a chat, and I'll go up to them and have a chat. And I just think that it takes two people to have a conversation. It can't be one side forcing on the other. Both parties have to want to do it, and they both want. If both parties want to help each other, then both parties put in equal effort.
Yeah, very wise words indeed. And you're absolutely right. If we just put that generational bias to one side and actually treat somebody as an individual and just listen and have that conversation, it's remarkable how much you actually do have in common, rather than just thinking about the differences between you. I want to finish off by asking you a question that I didn't prepare you for, but you clearly have a passion for what you do. You've been able to design your own life in the way that you wanted to, which I think is something which is a bit of a signature for Gen Z. Give me a sense of what's the best thing about being your age.
I think it's the opportunities we're given. I think that we can go and do whatever we want to do. If you're like me and you want to go and move from a city to the countryside, you can go and do it. If you want to move from the countryside to the city, you can go and do it as well. I think there's a lot more help for my generation from the older generations to get into different industries. But I also think it is one of those. I think there's difficulties, but I think for me the downsides the upsides are greater than the downsides to me. Yes, it's going to be difficult sometimes, and I've got to work in shit weather, but I'd much rather do that than be unhappy. I'd much rather be cold and wet than be sort of sat at home doing nothing.
Freddie, I love your positivity. I love the fact that you've just stepped out of any other comfort zone and just got on with what you actually wanted to do and just dealt with it and got on with it. It's been a pleasure talking to you on this podcast. Thanks for those insights, and keep up that amazing work that you're doing. And I wish you every success in your business. We'll put some details of your business in the social. So if anybody wants to come down to Wiltshire and learn some fishing, we know someone they can come to.
Perfect. Nice to talk to you, Alistair.
Great. Thanks again. And we will be back again in 2 weeks. Thanks very much for watching or listening. See you soon. Bye for now. The Alistair Greener Generationally Speaking podcast was presented by me, Alistair Greener. It was recorded at Granary Studios and produced by James Jones. Please follow us and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more, visit generationallyspeaking.co.uk.